Egg prices are soaring. Last week, the average wholesale price for large white shell eggs reached $8 for a dozen. This is wholesale. Retail, it's higher than this. The previous all-time wholesale price was $5.46 back in December 2022. How much are eggs retail right now?
Right now, probably $11, $12, $13, $14. Which ones you want? Brown eggs, you want free-range eggs, et cetera, But they're in the low teens right now.
I've never seen anything like that. Well, $14 for a dozen eggs.
They're killing the chickens.
Yeah.
And because of bird flu, right?
Because of bird flu. Now, let's ask the $64 trillion question. Is this another COVID crisis to greet President Trump?
MAGA's over here like, doesn't President Trump have the worst luck? After ignoring the existence of COVID and completely botching every aspect of responding to it, he's greeted with skyrocketing costs of groceries that he totally didn't campaign on immediately lowering.
I do think, unfortunately, look at the prices here. Things are way too expensive. And they're way too expensive because of Kamala Harris's policies. I mean, look, guess what? You want some eggs? Well, let's talk about eggs, because these guys actually eat about 14 eggs every single morning. Is that right?
Yeah.
Whoa. We'll be careful about this. Eggs, when Kamala Harris took office, were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policy.
Either the MAGA Republican Party thinks that no one captured hours and hours of their footage and posts about the cost of eggs, or they know MAGA supporters are too busy basking in the glow of Trump's hatred-driven policies to care. Either way, denying reality seems to be their only response to the problem that they campaigned on, but no longer give a damn about.
Look, this is a hearing about free speech. My colleague from Texas said nobody blamed Biden for the cost of eggs, and he has every right to say it because it's free speech. But that is total bullshit, okay? All of my colleagues were blaming Biden from eggs. Former President Trump blamed him on October 26th before the election, blaming him for the price of eggs. So let's get some grip.
I don't have to keep repeatedly playing the president talk about how he invented the word groceries while campaigning on it. Everyone already knows that. What they've done is tested the limits of bending their supporters' grasps on reality and determined that they could tell them that a pile of shit is a Snickers bar and they'd happily go eat it. But now that they're completely full of it after a few weeks of his presidency, the truth is beginning to bubble to the surface.
I need your help to save my farm and many other farms. I wanted to give you guys an update on what we figured out with our contract through NRCS. So to give you some backstory, if you haven't watched the previous video, please go out, watch that previous video I've got on there. We are possibly going to lose our farm if NRCS doesn't hold up their contract with us on the EQIP program. So the reason that they're not able to hold up the contract is our EQIP program, which is cost sharing on fences, waters, a well, and some seedings, was funded by the Inflation Reduction Act. Because of the executive orders, there's a pause or a freeze on the funding through the Inflation Reduction Act, and they're not able to pay out on the stuff that we completed or anything going forward. But the issue I have is I've already done a bunch of the work, already paid for the material, already paid for the labor, so I'm out all that cost, and I use my farm operating expenses in order to do those projects, because per contract, I knew that I was going to get cost sharing refunds on the stuff once completed, but now that it's completed, they're saying that they're unable to provide the funds because of the freeze on the Inflation Reduction Act funds. So I reached out to a couple different senators and Congress people. So I reached out to Ann Wagner's office. I have not heard back from them. I reached out to Josh Hawley's office. I have heard back from him, not from him personally, but from his office. And they are looking into it because they said that this should not be happening.
Josh Hawley's office said this wasn't supposed to be happening, but they're definitely not looking into it. Here's a live look at what Hawley was doing while his office was laughing at this farmer for expecting them to do anything about the upcoming loss of his farm. There were overwhelming signs, not even signs, but promises from this president that he was going to screw over the country, including his voters. He told them that he doesn't care about them.
I voted for Trump, and I regret it now.
As a Hispanic, I voted for Donald J. Trump. Dude, I regret it so much, man.
I am regretting my vote for Donald Trump.
I voted for Donald Trump, and now I regret it.
lot of people who were like me voted for Trump and have to account for that.
I regret voting for Trump.
So deeply regret my vote for Donald Trump.
I regret voting for Trump.
I was a dumbass, voted for Trump. It was the worst decision I ever made.
I've seen the light, and I got out of MAGA. A lot of us there have seen the light. We have deep regrets.
I feel guilty because I voted for Trump twice. I feel very guilty because I feel responsible. That's why he's still running.
I was with Trump for 9 straight years. I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed in Trump right now.
I'm seeing discussions in comment sections that span from people saying, "F around, find out," to we have to embrace these 4 to 5 MAGA folks that realize what's happening and not ridicule them now that they're voicing their regrets. Because we need them to fight back more effectively, which I understand, mainly because of the obvious fact that nearly all of us are going to have to suffer under this never-ending stupidity if we don't. But if his policies didn't actually come for his voters and only affected those that voted against him the way that he promised that they wouldn't, would they have unity on their minds? They knowingly voted based on oppressive and exclusionary hatred for people that they felt were beneath them, somehow ignoring the glaring signs that Trump's grasps on the ways the government works were completely non-existent.
I talked about 2 or 3 months ago to a college student from the Midwest. He reached out, he watches The Five, is thinking about a career in politics, really interested in political communication. We got on the phone, and he emailed me last week, and he said that I could share this. I've really appreciated hearing what you have had to say the past week on The Five and your podcast with Scott. So, yay, Scott. You've really opened my mind on certain things that are currently going on as someone who voted for Trump. And you have been communicating a lot of frustrations I've been feeling alongside some family and friends who didn't expect all the chaos. And then he puts in parentheses, not to mention the tariffs, as our family owns a small business where all our products are made in China. So this is a 20-year-old bro, right, from the middle of the country, comes from a conservative family. They love Trump. And it only took I got this a week ago. So it only took 2 weeks, this level of chaos, for him to feel strongly enough that he would write that down, right? That's not a casual comment. And he told me that I could talk about it, that I could put that out on air. So it's obviously something that's very emblematic of not only what's going on in his life, but what's going on in his orbit.
So the stories of regret go from farmers to college students whose families may have to live with the reality that they ridiculed others for experiencing at no fault of their own. But while we're wagging our fingers at opponents to these oligarchs for refusing to have any sympathy for MAGA voters, it's now time to pay attention to the Republican leaders that are still trying to tell their voters that they deserve the devastation that they're about to live through.
But the issue is it's a signed contract, it's a legally binding contract. They're not backing out on it, they're not paying out on it. So it puts me in a bind because I've made business decisions based on that contract.
What do you say to Skylar Holden and people in that predicament?
What I would say is Congress, that the government needs to do a better job at working for the American people. Too often, it seems like the American people's working for the government, and the whole purpose of freezing and putting a hold on everything right now is to review to make sure it's working the way that Congress and the executive is supposed to implement. It's unfortunate that this is the case. I've been talking with several farmers that have been experiencing this and trying to help guide them through this process. But it's all going to work out. Right now, it's a little bit disruptive, but that's what this administration promised whenever they were coming to Washington,
so
is that they would be disruptive and look at ways to make the government more efficient and working for the people.
In other words, Republican Jason Smith's message to his voters is, you knew we were snakes when you picked us up. Now, go pay attention to those immigrants while I snatch your wallet. It's either that or don't expect prices to go down the way that the president constantly promised they would. That would be a bad thing. That's what Chris Sununu said.
But on prices, people are wondering, when are the groceries going to go down? When are the housing costs going to go down? When are the inputs into their lives going to go down?
Effectively, they're not, though, right? That would be deflation. When we say prices going to, it means they finally stabilize at about a 1% inflation. If you had everything go down 10%, that might sound great, but that means we have a massive economic crisis in the country, right?